With just hours to go, she discovered her ex-husband, a doctor, would make an amazing sacrifice. The diner buzzed with the early morning crowd, the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee wafting through the air. Sarah moved like clockwork, pouring coffee for the regulars and taking orders with a practiced smile. But behind her eyes lay an ache, a constant reminder of the life she once had with Mark, a life that now felt distant and blurred. Jamie, her bright-eyed son, had always been her priority after the divorce, his laughter grounding her amid the chaos of their struggling town. Yet today, fate decided to play a cruel hand. As she filled a glass of orange juice for a customer, her phone buzzed violently on the counter. The words "doctor's office" flashed on the screen, churning her stomach. With trembling hands, she answered, her heart racing. The news hit her like a freight train. Jamie needed immediate treatment for his rare illness, a cure so costly that ordinary means would never suffice. Panic spiraled within her, heat rising to her cheeks. In one breath, her hopes shattered. In another, an ember of hope flickered. Mark, he could pay. All at once, her pride wrestled with desperation. She thought back to the memories, the way they used to dream together, planning out their future as if life would always bow to their plans. Those dreams had crumbled when Mark had moved further away, both physically and emotionally, swallowed by the shine of his medical career. Now, as Sarah stood in the cramped diner, her stomach knotted and heart pounding, she faced the daunting task of calling the man who had once been her everything. "Don't look back," she murmured to herself, biting her lip. Still, resentment bubbled up like bile. Every appointment had felt like a tug of war, each encounter a reminder of what could have been. The sweet rush of anger chased away her hesitations. This was Jamie's life. Time slipped through her fingers as she thought about that first shaky call she would have to make, her heart racing at the thought of connecting with him after all this time. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. When they finally met that evening, the air crackled with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. Jamie, frail yet imbuing the room with innocence, was a haunting reminder of their shared past. Mark's polished exterior faltered as he looked at his son, and it was as if the walls they'd built around themselves began to crumble. The fight inside Sarah surged. She could still see the flashes of the man she loved, buried beneath layers of professional ambition. Staring across the table, she saw anguish war within him. Mark's hands fidgeted, a man caught between the devotion to his career and the responsibility of fatherhood. As seconds stretched into eternity, the fragile hope of salvation hung heavily in the air, poised to shatter with one decision. Just as Sarah thought a breakthrough might come, a sudden commotion erupted in the diner, sending a jolt through them both. She felt breathless, anxiety pulsing through her. Would they run out of time to set things right? A loud crash jolted Sarah from her thoughts. A stack of plates had toppled over, the sound cutting through the murmur of the diner like a knife. She instinctively turned her head, her heart racing, not just from the noise, but from the oppressive weight of the moment. "Sarah, you good?" Maria, her coworker and confidant, called out from the counter. Her eyes were filled with concern. It wasn't just the plates. Sarah knew the tension was palpable, the gravity of her meeting with Mark hanging over them like a dark cloud. I think I'm fine," she stammered, forcing a smile. The next few moments felt surreal. Eyeing Mark, she saw how he, too, flinched at the sound of breaking dishes. The weight of the situation was shifting like the plates, precarious and threatening to crash. "Let us go outside," she whispered, hoping the quiet would soften the edges of their conversation. Mark nodded, his brow furrowed, and together they stepped out into the crisp evening air, away from the sizzling chaos behind them. The diner's neon sign flickered in the twilight, casting a wash of color on their dampened spirits. Jamie's laughter echoed faintly from inside, a haunting reminder of what brought them together and what now stood to tear them apart. Taking a breath, Sarah turned to Mark. "I need to talk to you about Jamie," she began, her heart thumping with both fear and resolve. "He needs treatment, a lot of it. I just learned how much it costs. We can't afford this without you." Mark shifted his weight, his expression inscrutable. He hesitated, pausing a beat too long. The silence between them felt charged, filled with the unspoken weight of years gone by. "I know we've had our differences, but if there's a chance to help him," Sarah's voice cracked, pushing through tears threatening to spill. "We need to put our pride aside. He needs you." Mark looked away for a moment, as if searching for answers in the blurred lights of the diner's sign. "I wish I could help. I really do," he murmured, the gloss in his eyes betraying him. "Do you mean that?" "Because saying you wish isn't enough, Mark." The words burst out before she could stop them. Sarah felt the ache deep down, seeing the hurt written on his face. "I'm a doctor, Sarah. I save lives every day, but I can't just drop everything I have a practice to run. People depend on me." Each word felt like a wall going up between them, and for a moment, the distance felt insurmountable. But it was Mark's voice, heavy and uncertain, that broke through the fog. What if there was another way? His eyes glimmered with the same stubborn resolve she once loved. "I can maybe set something up, get resources. There are programs, grants. It might not be as good," as he faltered, unsure how to say, "as good as paying out of pocket," but it was a start. Hope ignited in Sarah's chest, too fierce to stifle. "That could work. It's a risk, but we can try," she replied, a spark of energy rushing through her as the pieces of their fractured relationship began to align, even if just slightly. Just as relief washed over her, a loud bang echoed from inside the diner, pulling them back to reality. Sarah's heart sank again. She didn't want anything to interrupt this moment, their chance to turn the tide. "What was that?" Mark asked, his brow tensing. "I don't know." She turned back towards the door, the familiarity of anxiety creeping in again. "Let's go see. We can't afford another distraction." But when they stepped back inside, nothing could prepare them for what they were about to face, both inside the diner and within each other. As tension swelled, Sarah wondered how much more they could bear without breaking apart completely. Could this moment bring them closer together or push them farther apart? The moment Sarah stepped back into the diner, her breath caught in the back of her throat. The clamor of voices had shifted, morphing into a cacophony of surprise and curiosity. Customers peered toward the entrance, their eyes wide, and the clatter of silverware had dulled to hushed whispers. Her instincts kicked in. "What happened?" she asked, scanning the room, her heart beating like a drum. Maria was at the counter, her face pale. "It's Jamie," she replied, fear etched in her features. He collapsed. The ground seemed to tilt beneath Sarah's feet. Anxiety swirled, gripping her tightly. Without a word, she darted through the narrow path between tables, her legs propelling her towards the back of the diner, where Jamie usually played with his tray. Mark followed closely, the weight of his presence both grounding and daunting. They arrived to find Jamie lying on the floor, surrounded by a small circle of onlookers. His face was pale, eyes shut tight, and for a moment, time froze. "Get him some water," someone yelled, but Sarah couldn't focus on that. Panic surged through her as she knelt beside him, gathering him into her arms. "Jamie, honey, can you hear me?" she whispered, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "Please, open your eyes." Mark pushed through the crowd, kneeling down on the other side. "He needs medical attention." "Sarah, move aside." His voice had taken on a decisive tone, a doctor in crisis mode. But she hesitated, the bond of a mother clashing with a need for immediate action. "I can't just leave him," she protested, looking from Mark back to Jamie, whose breathing seemed shallow. "He is my son." "I know," Mark replied, his gaze steady but urgent. "But I can help him better if you let me check him out. Trust me, please." In that moment, Sarah felt the churning emotions collide within her. She was terrified, yet there was an undeniable trust in Mark's skill, and perhaps in him. Taking a deep breath, she shifted just enough for him to get closer. Mark's hands moved quickly, assessing Jamie's condition. "Stay calm, Sarah. I need you to breathe with me in and out." His voice was a lifeline, pulling her back to the present. Jamie's eyelids began to flutter, and for a moment, it felt like time resumed its rhythm. "Mom?" he murmured, his voice barely audible. Relief washed over Sarah, filling the cracks of worry that threatened to break her apart. "I'm right here, sweetie," she said, her fingers brushing his cheek. "You're safe. Just breathe." Mark's eyes darted from Jamie to the gathering crowd. "We need to move him to a better space." Volunteers for a lift? Several hands shot up, and the crowd sprang into action, eager to help. Sarah felt a wave of gratitude, mixed with something else's sense of unity. They were all there for Jamie, for the fight against the unthinkable. As they carefully lifted him and began moving toward the back exit, Sarah caught Mark's gaze. There was fire in his eyes now, a determination she hadn't seen in years. "You'll be okay, buddy," Mark reassured Jamie, adjusting his focus back to the boy. In that fleeting moment, Sarah knew they were tethered together by more than just the past. It felt like a second chance, a sliver of hope. But as they reached the outdoor patio, the world had shifted again. The air was thick with uncertainty, and outside, an ambulance siren wailed in the distance. Would this night bring them closer together, or tear them apart completely? As she clutched Jamie's hand tighter, she knew the answer was not just in the glow of healing, but also in the choices they would face together. As they gently laid Jamie down on the patio, the moonlight reflected off his sweat-slicked forehead. Sarah's heart raced with every passing second. The folks around them crowded closer, their faces etched with concern, casting furtive glances. The distant wail of the ambulance felt surreal, looming like a ghost that wouldn't fade. Mark hovered over Jamie. His practiced hands were now steady, almost calming. He shone a small flashlight into Jamie's eyes, observing the response. "Stay with me, Jamie," he urged, his voice a soothing balm amidst the chaos. Mom Jamie's voice cracked, but he was fighting to stay awake. "What is happening?" "You're okay, honey. We're just waiting for the doctors. Just keep looking at me," Sarah soothed, her own voice trembling as she tried to project confidence, though inside, waves of fear crashed against her composure. She glanced around at the gathering crowd, faces reflecting that same mix of fear and empathy. The spirit of community wrapped around her like a warm blanket, yet the weight of the moment felt heavy. This was her son, her everything, laying vulnerable on the ground. "Any history of heart problems?" Mark asked Sarah, still focused on Jamie. It wasn't exactly the right moment for a technical question, but she understood it came from a place of urgency. She shook her head, her mind racing, searching for any clue that could help. "No, he has always been healthy," she exclaimed, almost offensively. He just finished the baseball game. As she spoke, it dawned on her. Jamie had been more exhausted than usual lately. The arguments with his friends, the stress he never shared, could it be tied to this? "Just keep talking to him," Mark said, placing a hand gently on Jamie's shoulder. "He needs to know you're here. Do you remember our last baseball game? You hit that home run." Sarah's words came pouring out, stories, memories, snippets of laughter that felt like lifelines. "You were so fast around the bases. Everyone was cheering your name. You're my champion." Mark watched Sarah, admiration flickering across his face. Despite the turmoil, she was holding her focus, her voice unwavering. "Yeah, I remember," Jamie whispered, the ghost of a smile flickering across his lips. Her words floated around them like a fragile promise. The sound of sirens grew louder, piercing through the tension. Mark's eyes darted to the entrance where headlights slipped into view. "Help is almost here," he reassured, though they all felt the helplessness. But the moment stretched. They were in limbo, caught between hope and dread. Sarah's grip on Jamie's hand tightened, her heart aching to heal him with every ounce of love and energy she had left. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours, each tick of time stretching into an eternity. Mark had to act. He leaned closer to Sarah, but his attention was still on Jamie. I can't let him wait any longer. If I stabilize him now, I can help him more before the paramedics arrive. We need to make space. Mark. Panic surged again, but she nodded, her instincts taking over. Do whatever you need to do. With a determined look, Mark began to give commands, guiding the small crowd. They made a path, allowing him to work. The tension rolled through Sarah's stomach. She had trusted him before, but now, this felt different. This was life and death. Just then, as Mark prepared what he needed to do, Jamie's eyes flickered open fully. "Mom, don't leave," he whispered, the vulnerability in his voice slicing through her heart. She leaned closer, tears creeping into her eyes. "I'm right here, Jamie. I promise I'm not going anywhere. Not ever." Mark's voice broke through softly. "Keeping him talking is the key. Focus on him, Sarah. Don't let him slip away." But just as she began to draw in strength from the words of comfort, something in Jamie's expression shifted. "Mom," he said, a look of fear finally breaking through, "I'm so tired." In that instant, Sarah felt the world inching closer, a pressure closing in on her chest. What if he wasn't going to be okay? The ambulance roared into the parking lot, lights flashing. Relief, mixed with dread as time unfurled before her. What if this wasn't just a moment of crisis, but a turning point in their lives? As the medics rushed toward them, Sarah could only wonder if they were ready for the truth that lay just ahead. Would it bring them together or unravel the fragile ties they had? With her heart pounding, she held Jamie's hand tighter, hoping for the best, but fearing the worst. The paramedics moved with purpose, their presence a rushed but welcome sight. Heavy footsteps echoed against the patio as they knelt beside Jamie, quickly assessing the scene. Sarah felt the air thicken with urgency, her heart pounding in sync with the rapid movements around them. She struggled to stay composed, her fingers intertwined with Jamie's. "Okay, Jamie, we're going to take good care of you," one of the medics, a soft-spoken woman with bright blue eyes, said, her tone both firm and calming. "Can you tell me what you're feeling?" "Just tired," Jamie murmured, a flicker of alarm flashing across his face. He clenched Sarah's hand tighter, as if it were his lifeline. "Can we use the stretcher?" another medic asked Mark. Their eyes met, and Mark nodded, stepping back to allow them room. "Just hold on, buddy," Mark added, his voice steady but underscored with urgency. "They're going to help you." As they carefully lifted Jamie onto the stretcher, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The sight of her son, frail and unresponsive at times, sent a surge of panic through her. She remained at his side, wanting to shield him from the world, but knowing she had to let them act. Mom Jamie's voice slipped out again in a whisper, weakened but insistent. "Stay with me. I'm right here, sweetheart," she breathed, tears spilling over her cheeks. She leaned down, brushing his forehead, wishing away any pain he might be feeling. With practiced efficiency, the medics strapped him to the stretcher, explaining each step clearly. "We're going to take you to the hospital now, and you'll get the best care." "Is Dad coming?" Jamie suddenly asked, latching onto a thread of thought like it was a safety net. The question struck Sarah like a blow. It was one thing to be thrust into this moment, but mentioning his father felt like opening a floodgate. Ever since they parted, conversations about Jamie's well-being had felt delicate and strained. "I'll call him," she promised, swallowing hard. The reminder of her ex-husband's sudden presence quickened her pulse. They hadn't been on speaking terms for months, but there was something that changed when it came to Jamie. Her son's vulnerability seemed to blur those hard lines they had drawn. The medics pushed Jamie toward the waiting ambulance, and Sarah followed, refusing to let go. Her heart raced at the thought of calling Rob, but deep down, she felt a pull toward family, whatever that meant anymore. "Mark," she called out, catching him just before he walked away. "Can you help me?" He turned back, concern flooding his expression. "With what?" "Can you call Rob?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The thought of asking felt heavy, but Jamie needed his dad there, whether they liked it or not. That Mark's gaze softened, and he nodded without hesitation. "I'll take care of it. You stay by Jamie." As they loaded her son into the ambulance, Sarah climbed in beside him, the cool air a sharp contrast to the rising warmth of her anxiety. Jamie's eyes fluttered, meeting hers just shy of panic. "Are they going to help me?" he asked, the broken trust in his eyes nearly unraveling her resolve. "Yes, sweetheart," she vowed, laying a gentle hand on his cheek. "You're going to be okay. You're strong." The medic looked over. "It's going to be a bumpy ride, but we'll monitor you closely." Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an unknown number. Her instincts hesitated, but something made her answer. She pressed it to her ear, her heart racing. The voice on the other end was familiar, filled with urgency. "Sarah? It's Rob. I heard about Jamie. I'm on my way." The words hung in the air thick with emotion. What would it mean for them to face this together? And could this moment, fraught with fear, be the doorway to healing their family? As the ambulance roared to life, Sarah clung to both hope and fear. Would they all emerge from this stronger, or would Jamie's health draw deeper divides in their already complicated bond? The sirens blared, drowning out her thoughts as the darkness steadily stretched ahead, promising the unexpected. Would they overcome the distance between their hearts, or would this moment send them spiraling further apart? The ride to the hospital felt endless. The sirens wailed, cutting through the night, while Sarah's heart thundered in her chest. She held Jamie's hand tightly, feeling his grip weaken. Every small twitch of his fingers sent shivers racing through her, an urgent alarm resounding in her mind. "Breathe, Jamie," she whispered, brushing back the hair from his forehead. "Focus on my voice." He looked at her, his eyes glazing over, a hint of fear shadowing his features. "Mom, I'm scared," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I know, sweetheart, but you're not alone. I'm right here," she reassured him, though her own heart quaked with uncertainty. The medic busied herself with the equipment, adjusting monitors that beeped rhythmically. "You're doing great, Jamie. Just keep talking to your mom. We'll be there in a few minutes." Sarah tried to maintain her calm, though inside, chaos raged. She wanted to believe everything would be okay, but the thought of losing him sent her spiraling. She glanced out the window. The city lights blurred into streaks of color, flashing by like the moments slipping through her fingers. "Mom, do you think Dad will be there when we get there?" Jamie's voice was softer now, laced with the vulnerability of a child who still believed in heroes. "I hope so, honey. He might even surprise us," she replied, feeling the weight of their fractured relationship loom over them like a dark cloud. In truth, she didn't know how Rob would react. Would he be present, or would the tension between them burst back to life? The ambulance jolted as they pulled up to the hospital. The sound of metal clanging and doors slamming echoed in the stillness of the night. The medics worked efficiently, carefully wheeling Jamie inside. "On three," one said, and they lifted Jamie from the stretcher, transferring him to the hospital bed. Sarah hurried alongside, staying close as they began their assessments. "Mom," Jamie's voice wavered again, more desperate now. "Please don't leave me." "I'll never leave you," she promised, squeezing his hand one last time before the doctors moved in with their protocols and equipment, their voices blending into a flurry of urgent professionalism. A familiar figure rushed into the room, and Sarah's heart sank. Rob appeared, looking both worried and lost. The sight of him stirred a mix of emotions: love, anger, nostalgia, all tangled together. "Jamie," Rob exclaimed, his eyes darting to the hospital bed. The moment they locked eyes, a silent understanding passed between them. This was not just Jamie's fight. It was theirs too. "Rob," Sarah began, but he was already moving to Jamie's side, kneeling down to meet his son's gaze. "Hey, buddy," Rob said, his voice gentle. "I'm here. Dad, help me." Jamie whimpered, the fear raw in his eyes. Rob's expression hardened with resolve. That glimmer of determination ignited something in Sarah. She recognized that familiar spark, the instinct to protect and heal. "I'm going to make sure the doctors do everything they can for you," Rob asserted, standing taller. "You're strong, Jamie. No matter what, we'll face this together." The hospital buzzed around them, nurses coming in and out, but in that moment, It was just a family reframing itself through grief and fear. As the doctor began explaining the situation, Sarah felt a whirlwind of emotions. Hope, fear, and an inkling of reconciliation hung in the air like a fragile thread. Would they unite to fight for Jamie's health, or would the stakes tear them apart again? As Rob leaned in closer to hear the doctor, Sarah's heart raced. The weight of that night pressed heavily on her. But then she noticed Jamie's face, a quiet resolve creeping in. Maybe tonight, just maybe, they could begin to stitch together the pieces of their family, one heartbeat at a time. And as they all settled in for the battle ahead, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this turn point might redefine their relationship, a beacon of hope in their journey toward healing. What compromise would they have to make to pull through this? What would they sacrifice to ensure Jamie's safety? The doctor's voice was a steady anchor in the chaotic atmosphere of the hospital room. Jamie has a serious condition, but we're going to do everything possible, he said, looking from Sarah to Rob, who stood frozen at Jamie's bedside. Time slowed as Sarah absorbed the magnitude of the doctor's words. What does that mean? Rob asked, his brow furrowed with concern. He needs immediate surgery. The procedure is risky, but it's his best chance, the doctor explained, all businesslike, but with a gentleness in his tone that cut through Sarah's panic that a lump formed in her throat. Surgery? Will he be okay? The doctor met her gaze with steadfast eyes. We'll do our best, but I need both of you to stay strong for him. Jamie's small hand lay limp in Rob's grip. Sarah could see the fear flickering in Jamie's eyes, an echo of the worry churning in her own heart. She stepped closer, brushing a trembling finger over his knuckles. Hey, we're right here. Okay? Sarah said softly. You're brave, Jamie. We know you can do this. But Jamie's gaze darted between his parents, searching for reassurance. Mom, Dad, he started, his voice catching slightly, revealing the cracks in his courage. We're together, remember? Rob reassured him, the warmth returning to his voice. You're the strongest kid I know, and we're going to get through this as a team. The word team hung in the air, and Sarah felt a crack open up in her heart. For the first time in what felt like ages, she sensed a sliver of unity between them. Would this be enough for Jamie? Would it be enough for them? I'll go get the surgical team ready, the doctor said, backing away gently. You should take a moment to gather your thoughts. We'll meet again shortly. As the door clicked shut, silence fell like a heavy blanket. Jamie lay there, wide-eyed and vulnerable. But there was a flicker of hope in his expression. Sarah took a deep breath and squeezed his hand tighter. Jamie, we're going to be here waiting for you. And when you wake up, I promise we'll be celebrating together, just like the old days, okay? She said, her voice thin but determined. Old days, he echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. Rob shifted his weight, looking from Jamie to Sarah, the air thick with unspoken words. Maybe this was the moment to set aside their grievances. They both loved the same boy, after all. What do we do next? Rob asked, his tone threaded with tension. Sarah turned to him, battling 100 emotions. We have to trust the doctors and each other, she replied, her heart aching with the weight of those words. Rob nodded, his expression serious. I wish I could do more help in some way. Being here is enough, she said, feeling the tension begin to loosen, if only slightly. It was an unfamiliar step towards bridging their divided past together for Jamie. Minutes passed like hours as they kept their eyes on their son, witnessing the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of his chest. The waiting was agonizing, but it was a period where every few moments they dared to look at each other. A shared future loomed ahead, perhaps mended, perhaps not, just around the corner. Then, suddenly, the doctor returned with 2 nurses in tow, breaking the silence with a steely calm. Okay, we're ready, he announced, meeting Sarah's desperate eyes. Rob moved closer to Jamie, lowering himself half on the bed so they were face to face. You're going to be amazing, buddy, and we're going to need you to hold on tight. Carlos shifted his gaze towards Sarah, a glimmer of determination present in Rob that hadn't been there before. Maybe this was their unexpected opportunity to reconcile. But as they followed the gurney into the operating room, a thought crept into the edges of Sarah's mind, what if this surgery didn't go as planned? What if they lost him? In that moment, she felt a chill run through her. The stakes were higher than ever. Would they emerge from this uncertainty stronger as a family, or would it drive them even further apart? The answer felt like it hung on the precarious edge of knife. The door closed behind them. Sarah clutched her heart, hoping for a miracle. What revelation would they face as they waited for news? The waiting room was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just left behind. It felt cold and sterile, the white walls almost closing in around them. Sarah sat stiffly in one of the plastic chairs, hands clasped tightly together. Rob paced near the window, his gaze fixed outside, but she knew he wasn't really seeing anything. His mind was miles away, running the same anxious loops as hers. Every tick of the clock sounded like a drum echoing in her ears. The dull thud reminded her that time was slipping by. They would get updates, she told herself, but the seconds felt like hours. She watched as other families sat in similar silence, some with anxious expressions, others with tears streaming down their faces. It was a collective suffering, each waiting for their own news, praying for hope. Suddenly, she felt something shift beside her. Rob had returned and sat down, close but with a distance that still lingered between them. "Do you believe he'll make it?" he asked, his voice raw and vulnerable that a lump formed in Sarah's throat. "I have to believe he will," she replied, though she could feel her heart racing, doubt creeping in like a shadow. The idea of losing Jamie was a thought she couldn't allow to take root. "He is strong, just like you said." Rob nodded, but didn't respond. She could see his internal struggle reflected in his features. It was as if he were wrestling with not just Jamie's fate, but the unresolved knots between them. "Do you remember the camping trip?" Sarah asked suddenly, trying to draw them both away from the heavy topic. "When we got lost and ended up hiking for hours." A small smile flickered across Rob's face, a glimmer of nostalgia. "You thought you knew the way back," he said, his tone shifting slightly. "And you kept insisting it was left at the creek. We ended up in that muddy field." She chuckled lightly, the memory wrapping around them like a warm embrace. "But we were a team then, navigating together." Rob's smile faded slightly, replaced by a seriousness that weighed heavily. "Yeah, we were." Their shared laughter hung in the air like a fragile bubble, ready to pop at any moment. Both of them understood that those carefree days felt so far away now, overshadowed by the stark reality before them. "Do you think Jamie remembers those times?" Rob asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "He does. I know he does," Sarah said. "We have to remind him when he wakes up, all those moments, those adventures. It'll give him something to hold on to." Rob nodded, though the concern etched across his brow suggested he wasn't fully convinced. "But what if don't?" Sarah interrupted. "Just don't." She could feel the panic rising again. "Let us focus on what we can control." The air grew heavy with the weight of all the words unspoken. Sarah caught sight of a nurse walking down the hallway, and her heart quickened. "Do you think they'll come and tell us soon?" "They have to," Rob replied. "They said the surgery would take a couple of hours, and it's been almost that long." Then, just as a wave of dread washed over her, the door to the waiting room swung open, and a doctor in scrubs stepped in. He was looking directly at them. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter?" Time froze in that moment. All Sarah could do was stare, a whirlwind of emotions crashing over her. Hope and despair intertwined, creating a knot in her stomach. What if Rob began? But Sarah felt a strange sense of urgency swell within her. She grabbed onto his arm, her heart racing. The doctor opened his mouth to speak, and Sarah braced herself for whatever news was about to come. Would they have a chance to be a family again? Or was this the closing chapter in their story instead? One truth resonated within her, whatever the outcome. They needed to face it together. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment might change everything again. What would they do next if it wasn't the outcome they prayed for? What sacrifices would they be willing to make for Jamie? The tension in the air was palpable as the doctor cleared his throat. His eyes, heavy with the burden of his role, held both compassion and authority. Sarah's grip on Rob's arm tightened instinctively, like a lifeline in a storm. She felt his heart beating through his shirt, rapid and frantic. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I'm afraid Jamie faced complications during surgery. The doctor began, his voice steady but weighted. The words hung in the air like a thundercloud, thick and oppressive. What kind of complications? Sarah managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. She could feel the world tilt on its axis. The doctor hesitated, searching for the right words. There was significant blood loss, which made the procedure more risky than we anticipated. We've stabilized him for now, but he is in critical condition. We will do everything possible to help him, but I have to tell you it's going to be a long road ahead. Rob's face turned pale as he absorbed the news. The hope in his eyes dimmed, replaced by something darker, something more primal fear. Can't you do something? Isn't there anything more you can do? His voice was strained, desperate. We're doing everything we can, the doctor replied softly. We'll monitor him closely and provide updates. For now, you should prepare for the worst-case scenario while still hoping for the best. The doctor's words felt like a punch to Sarah's gut. She fought to keep her composure, but the walls of the waiting room felt like they were closing in. What does that even mean? Worst-case scenario? A lump in her throat threatened to choke her, but she pushed through. It means he may not wake up. We just don't know yet, the doctor said gently before turning to leave, the weight of his news hanging heavily in the air. A quiet sob slipped from Sarah's lips, and Rob wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. They melted into each other, cocooned in the shared grief that was now a reality they hadn't prepared for. He whispered reassuring words, but they felt hollow, echoing against the backdrop of their fears. I can't lose him, Rob, she choked out, tears streaming down her face. He is our son. I know. Rob's voice was raw, but there was an edge to it that caught her attention. But we have to think strategically. We need to explore all options. What do you mean? Sarah pulled back, confusion flickering across her face. Before we were married, my dad knew a top specialist in pediatric neurosurgery. He still practices. If we could get Jamie transferred, Rob, Sarah interrupted sharply. Are you suggesting you reach out to your ex-wife? It's not just about her, he countered, pain flickering in his eyes. It's Jamie's life on the line. This is about what's best for him. But she is not just going to jump at the idea. It's complicated, Sarah said, crossing her arms, uncertainty flooding her heart. Complicated or not, we have to consider every angle. He stepped back, the resolve returning to his posture. I know her. We might be divorced, but she is still my friend, and more importantly, she's a brilliant surgeon. Sarah stared at him, the reality setting in. He could reach out, but would he? And you think she will help us help Jamie? His eyes bore into hers, determination mingling with the remnants of pain. I have to believe she would. I can't sit back and do nothing while our son fights for his life. She felt a flicker of hope mixed with confusion. Could they really put aside their history for Jamie? What will you say to her? Sarah asked, her heart racing as the weight of the decision loomed. I'll tell her the truth, Rob said, his voice firm. That we need her now, that he needs her. We owe him that much. In that moment, the gravity of their shared mission swept over them. One question loomed larger than all the others. Would reaching out to Rob's ex-wife be the key to saving Jamie, or would it only open a flood of complications they weren't prepared to deal with? As they faced the uncertainty together, a storm of emotions swirled around them, fear, hope, and the bitter taste of their past. But they knew they had to take the next step, no matter how daunting it felt. Would this turn of events bring them closer or drive them further apart? The hospital waiting room was a world of uncertainty, anxiety swirling around Sarah and Rob as they clung to their hopes for Jamie. Minutes turned into hours, each tick of the clock echoing in their minds like a countdown. Those fleeting moments spent separately now felt like burdens. They were tethered together in their fight for their son's life, against all odds. Then, finally, Rob broke the heavy silence. I need to call her, he said, his voice steady but filled with unspoken fears. Are you sure? Sarah asked, The weight of his ex-wife's name hung in the air like a fragile thread. Yeah, he nodded, resolve building in his posture. For Jamie's sake, I have to try. As Rob stepped away to make the call, Sarah grappled with a rush of emotions. The like of relief and apprehension danced at her heart. She thought of Jamie, his laughter, his goofy smile. He needed both his parents, united in purpose, something they hadn't been for years. Time passed slowly, and Sarah leaned against the wall, breathing in and out, drawing strength from the flickering overhead lights. Moments later, Rob returned, eyes filled with the intensity of uncertainty. She answered. She's on her way, he said, his voice laced with a blend of trepidation and hope. Really? Sarah's heart swelled with a tentative excitement. Yeah, he exhaled, running a hand through his hair. She understands the seriousness. Said she'd do whatever it takes. For a split second, the possibility of salvation flickered in Sarah's heart. They could bring Jamie the help he needed. An expert could truly change everything. Just then, the doors swung open, and a new presence charged into the waiting room. It was Rob's ex-wife, Kelly. Determined yet soft, she exuded a palpable strength. "Where's Jamie?" she asked immediately, her voice firm yet suddenly compassionate. "Right this way," Rob said, leading her through the winding halls. Relief washed over Sarah at Kelly's presence. Here was someone who could help them navigate this crisis. They entered Jamie's room, where he lay fragile yet fighting, the lights casting soft shadows across the floor. The moment Kelly saw Jamie, her eyes filled with tears, yet her demeanor remained professional. What happened? Sarah explained everything in a rush. The surgery, the complications, the fear. Each word released the pent-up anxiety that had built within her since their ride to the hospital. "Okay," Kelly said, her tone shifting to a clinical precision. "I'll need to take a closer look at his charts and talk to the team. We need to get him stabilized." Watching Kelly leap into action brought a new sense of hope to Sarah. For the first time, she felt they weren't simply spectators in Jamie's struggle. They had allies fighting alongside them. Hours stretched on, but they stood united, waiting for signs that Jamie was improving. Rob, Kelly, and Sarah started to share memories, laughter piercing the veil of unease for those brief moments. Jamie's love for baseball, that unforgettable camping trip, how he could always light up a room. Their shared narratives bound them together, slowly knit them back into a family unit. Finally, as the night waned, a doctor entered the room with cautious optimism. "Jamie has stabilized enough. He is responding well to treatment, but there is a lot of recovery ahead." Rob, Kelly, and Sarah exchanged glances filled with relief. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. As the doctor continued to explain the next steps, Jamie stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open. "Mom, Dad?" he mumbled weakly, confusion clouding his features. "I'm right here, buddy," Rob soothed, moving closer, taking Jamie's little hand in his. "We're all here," Kelly added, her voice tender yet strong. Jamie blinked, then settled into a small smile that made Sarah's heart race. "I was worried, but I knew you would come." Months of distance, hurt, and anger seemed to wash away in that small moment. Sarah knew they were not just conquering a health crisis, but also rebuilding connections, each powered by the love they all had for Jamie. Time flowed differently after. That night, there were challenges ahead, a long road of recovery and emotion, but as a family, their hearts were different now. Each step they took was imbued with purpose and a recognition of the love they shared. Together, they whispered to each other numerous times a day now, each time reinforcing their bond. Challenges were no longer faced alone. They were each other's pillars, a family reinvented through trials. As Sarah watched Jamie's laughter filter through their home once more, she felt a warmth in her heart, a glow of hope. The darkness hadn't consumed them. It had forged them anew, and in that truth, that raw, honest resilience, Sarah knew one thing for sure. They could face anything together. Now, as they forged ahead, it was time for you to share this moment with others. You need to subscribe now to catch more heart-touching transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this story. Comment your feelings about the journey you just witnessed and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need a glimpse of hope and community. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait, not even one more second to share.